行くぞはっジェノサイカッタ
What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. This is Forgo, and before we get in this video, I do want to remind everybody to finish their super mission. This is going to be the last day for this. Make sure that you do everything in here so that way you can get your selectors here for your imprint stones. Don't forget about this. And so today what we're going to talk about is, I get a lot of questions about, is this character worth building? Should I build this character? Blah, 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 blah. Well, today what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the regular Fest characters. That means non-BS, non-SS, and non-collab characters. And I'm going to tell you exactly where they're probably going to be good at, where you can actually use them in the game. So then it'll give you an idea whether or not you should really be working on them or building them. And before we dive any more into that, I do want to remind everybody when it comes to RHD, which is Reviving Hell's Dungeon, this game mode right here. In this game mode, right, this is where you're actually going to be getting your experience bottles. And you need certain teams in this game. You're going to need green teams, yellow teams, and purple teams. But once you get past tier 30, you're going to start needing, attack teams. You're going to start needing balance teams, defensive teams. And the teams that you're actually going to need is you're going to need a purple attack and you're going to need purple defense. You don't need purple balance at all. So that's something to keep in mind when you're leveling up purple characters for RHD. When it comes to green, you're going to need green defense and you're going to need green balance. So when it comes to green attackers, you're not going to need them from RHD. Remember, though, you can use any color that you want, any green, purple, whatever it may be, from the first tier 1 to tier 30. But after that, you're going to start needing specific typings. When it comes to blue, you're going to need a blue defensive team and a blue attack. Blue balance is going to be useless after tier 40. And then you're going to need a red balance team and a red defensive team. So red attack will again be useless after tier 40. And then for your yellow, you're going to need an attack and you're going to need defensive teams, right? All yellow attack, all yellow defense. So yellow balance is going to be useless past tier 40. So keep that in mind whenever I'm talking about these Fest characters, because I'm not going to be mentioning the RHD factor. You could use any of the Fest characters for RHD, no matter how bad they actually might be. They actually are still very, very strong in RHD, because in this game mode, it's really just all about having your characters at a high enough awakened level to be able to get it done, right? That's really the only thing that really matters. Just have the requirement for it. So when we get into the actual Fest characters, right, now I'm going to be skipping across the BS and SS and not in collabs. Right, we're just going to move along. So Clone Zero, you absolutely should be leveling him up because, one, you can level up for free in the game from Team Relay Dungeon. You can get memories for him. And you do need a red defensive team for RHD. And I'm going to be briefly going over these characters because there's a lot of them. So we'll just kind of move along and hopefully I don't miss any of them. The next one would be Bainessa. Bainessa is actually really good for the Immortal Typhon because she does actually do chill. She's actually a really good character for that, and really just for your purple attack team and RHD, and that's really where she's going to shine. Unfortunately, I mean, you probably could use her in Spider Robot if you can keep her alive. She doesn't have immunity, but she's really not the best character for it. Then you have Kula. Now, Kula's an actually amazing team for Immortal Typhon as well. One, because she has type advantage, but she also has chill and freeze, which is very important for that dungeon. That's really where she shines. She's also going to be a really good striker for Spider Robot. Halloween Chris has a great leadership for Purple Fighters. He's actually really good for the Immortal Typhon. He's actually really good for Immortal Nyx also because he does have Dot Explosion. So that is something to keep in mind. He's got good leadership for the Purple Fighters. So he's actually really good because he's actually good in 2 different Immortal Dungeons. Pretty big, unfortunately, is just going to be good for RHD. And she's actually good for Immortal Rock because she does do poison damage, right? You put her on the first team, she's actually really good for that. Then you have Pretty Zero, who actually has a great leadership for the Nest Fighters with a PG rate. And you do need a yellow attack team. She's actually good against Immortal Most also because yellow does have the type advantage. She can be useful against maybe something like Immortal Nyx also, as long as you have a dot exploding character on the team with a darkness character. I mean, she is pretty strong. And then you get Lady Chang, who is a yellow defensive character. She's going to be really great for the RHD. She's actually really good for Immortal Most because she actually has shock. She's actually a very strong character, really good for it. And then you have Geese Howard here, who unfortunately won't be really good for RHD past tier 30, but he does have Dot Explosion. He's actually, it really depends. If you have his 3PG from Nightmare Geese, his stocks go up big time. If you don't have it, then his stocks go down. He's not near as good, unfortunately. Then you have Mr. Karate, who's actually a freaking god. He's wonderful. Karate's biggest disability is the fact that he doesn't have any disability or any survivability, I'm sorry, because he doesn't have any decreased damage received. But he's a very, very strong character, has a very long 3PG, and he's actually really good in Immortal Dungeons and Spider Robot. Unshackled Iori is actually pretty decent for Immortal Victor. He's also going to be, he has the defensive typing for the RHD, so he's actually going to be really good there. Keo can be good for Guild Raid because he actually has the burn. He's actually a really great striker with certain characters in Guild Raid also. He's good for RHD. And that's probably about it. K, great leadership for Red Fighters. Really good for Immortal Rock. Actually, Keo's good for Immortal Rock also. And if you have K's new 3PG, he's going to, his stocks just go up. And with a lot of these characters, that's kind of the thing, right? Leona, she's an absolute god against Immortal Vulcan. And that's really where she's going to shine. You do need a blue defensive team for RHD. Ash, you need a green defensive team for RHD. Ash is pretty much trash. But I didn't even mean to make that rhyme, but it did. But he does have a great leadership for green fighters. Then you got Mukai. Mukai is just bad. He's only good for RHD. Nameless is absolutely awesome. He's good for Immortal Most. Got the type advantage. He's got a great long 3PG. He's actually good for Immortal Nyx. He can actually be really good for the Spider Robot, believe it or not. Nameless is actually very, very strong. Then you got Ignis. Ignis is actually really, really good. Good for Immortal Most. He's got the shock damage. If you got his 3PG, you're loving life from BS Ignis. But even if you don't, he's actually still really good for the Immortal Most. Zero, again, if you got the 3PG for BS Zero, freaking godly. If you don't, his stocks go down quite a bit. He's not near as good without that 3PG. He's okay for Immortal Vulcan if you throw some recovery stones on him. But if you have this 3PG, he's pretty much a god. Rugal's the same situation. Rugal's actually really good against Immortal Vulcan because he has good heals. He has a lot of great survivability with his hyper armor, but his 3PG, his supers, they just do grabs, right? They're instantly canceled. He doesn't stall the timer at all. If you have his 3PG, his stocks go up. He's actually really good for Immortal Vulcan and actually really good for the Elemental Event. And a lot of these characters that I mentioned could be good for the Elemental Events. If they have hyper armor on them, then they're going to be a lot better for the Elemental Event. If they don't, they're going to take a tremendous amount of damage. Then you have Leona here, who's a god. Against Immortal Vulcan and Immortal Nyx because of her dot explosion. She's so good for those things. And then you have Iori. Iori's actually amazing for Spider Robot. He can actually be really good in Guild Raid for the players that don't have SS and BS characters. He's not going to be good against Nightmare Geese, but against Rugal, he is. Orochi here is going to be really great for the Epic Quest. He's not going to be really good for RHD past tier 40, but he is good for Guild Raid. He's actually a damn good character. You actually could really even use him even in the Spider Robot. Guinness is an absolute god against the Spider Robot. Good against Immortal Victor. Maybe he could be good against Immortal Nyx. And whenever I speak about Immortal Nyx, that's an Immortal Dungeon that has no type advantage, no color. So it doesn't matter what color you bring in against them. All you really need against that boss is just Darkness and Dot Explosion. And then we move along. Lady Geese is just, I'm sorry, she's bad. She's not very good for anything. She could be useful, I guess, as a striker because she has Darkness as a striker. And she could be maybe used as a damage dealer against Guild Raid, but I wouldn't recommend it. She's just not that great. Maxima here, she's actually really good against Spider Robot. And you do need a purple attack team for RHD. Then we move along. Nakaruru, she's okay against Immortal. She's actually not that great, but you do need a green balance for RHD. Psyche, you're just going to use him for RHD, unfortunately. Xian's actually really good against Immortal Most because he has Dot Explosion, he's a yellow, he has a type advantage, and he has the PG rate leadership. And then we kind of scoot along here, and let me see if I can find the next character. Hopefully I don't skip over any. And the next one's going to be Rock. Rock Howard can actually be good against Immortal Vulcan if built correctly and maxed out. He does have a decent 3PG, but unfortunately that's about all he's really good for. Rio is kind of the same thing. He's a great leadership for the Blue Fighters, for Immortal Vulcan, but that's about it. He does have chill damage, so he can be useful as a striker in Spider Robot. Adelheid here is decent for Immortal Victor, and he's actually decent for the Spider Robot because he does have shock damage. And then we get into Terry. Terry really just isn't that good for anything. He's okay for Immortal Most if you guys 3PG, but he really isn't that good. Orochi Chris here does have Dot Explosion, is really good for the Immortal Most because of that, has a type advantage, and can be good for Immortal Nyx, but more than likely will probably die against him. Jeanette, great leadership for green fighters with a PG rate leadership, lots of survivability, hyper armor. She's just a really, really solid character. Very, very strong, and you do need a green balance team for RHD. Mature, she's just going to be good for RHD. Hotaru, she's actually really good for Immortal Most because she does have freeze. And I think, I'm going to look at her striker bonus. And she's actually a really good striker for the spider robot as well. And then we kind of scoot along here. Let me see if we can find the next one. I know I'm quickly going over them, but there's just a lot of the characters to just kind of talk about. Then we get into Elizabeth. She's going to be good for your RHD team. Maybe decent for Immortal Victor. Goro, really good for Immortal Vulcan. He's so good for Immortal Vulcan. Super, super underrated character for that boss. Lady Braun is trash. She's only good for the RHD. Kim Capwan, she's going to be decent for Immortal Typhon, but she's really mainly just going to be an RHD character. Vice, RHD. Mian here, she can actually be good against the Immortal Most. And you do need a yellow attack team for RHD. Then you got Elizabeth here, the green defensive. She's going to be good for RHD. And that's about it. If we ever get an Immortal Dungeon with Starlight, she's going to be one of the best characters for it because she has a great leadership for defensive fighters. And then we scoot along to Alice. Alice can be good for Immortal Rock because she does have poison. I've seen free-to-play teams actually get it done against it. She probably would be okay against the Immortal Victor. Then Lin here, he's actually going to be really good for Immortal Nyx because of his dot explosion. He's going to help out a lot. Hanato here, let me look at Hanato's kit. I can't even remember. I think she's got Starlight if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, she's got Starlight. She could be useful in the guild raids. Let me look at her striker bonus. Okay. But again, you know, I think she's going to be one of those characters. I mean, she's going to be good for RHD because she's a yellow defensive fighter. But I think as of now, really, she doesn't have much relevance. Chrysalid, RHD is pretty much it. Shermie. Unfortunately, Shermie just isn't very good for anything. Early on, she's going to be good for the Shizuru, but that's about it. And then you get into Pretty Clone. Pretty Clone's going to be good for RHD. She could be good for Immortal Rock. Yashiro's trash. Chris here. Chris could be good for Immortal Vulcan. I don't think he really has anything. He doesn't have any heals in his kit, which for Immortal Vulcan you really need. I mean, he's got decreased damage received. I mean, he could be good for the Immortal Nyx because he does apply darkness. I mean, and again, Immortal Nyx doesn't have any color advantage or disadvantage. And that is it. Oh, and I almost forgot. We got one more that isn't on my list here, which is Kim Capwan. Now, Kim Capwan is a yellow fighter, but unfortunately, he's a yellow bounce fighter, so he's not going to be good for RHD past tier 30. And I believe he has bleed, if I'm not mistaken. I think he has bleed. Yeah, he's got bleed damage, so he could be, you know, decent for Immortal Victor because of that, but he really doesn't have much use except for really PvP. So in a gist, that's pretty much where all the normal fest characters are going to be good at, where they're not going to be good, and just a quick summary of them. And there's no way I could have went over every single little detail about every single character, but I just wanted to give you guys a quick rundown of them for those of you that are asking about them. You know, some of them characters, you know, they need a certain 3PGs like Zero and Rugal and Geese 14. They need those 3PGs in order for them to really be good. If they don't have them, then they're not as good. I mean, maybe they have some usefulness, but I mean, in RHD, all of the fest characters are useful until you start getting into the highest tiers. And early on, a lot of us players, we did just go ahead and level up whatever characters for RHD because we were just trying to get to higher tiers so we could get more experienced battles. So that is something to always keep in mind. All of the characters are relevant in that sense, but when you start talking Spider Robot, Guild Raid, Immortal Dungeons, then things start to change as far as how relevant those characters actually are. So let me know how y'all doing in the game, and I do stream on Twitch at 9 p.m. GMT plus 7 time. The link will be in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Y'all take care and have a good one. See ya.